When Simone called her husband's phone at midnight, a woman's voice answered. But what she heard next wasn't just betrayal, it was something far more sinister. In one phone call, her perfect life shattered. But the truth would change everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and survival. Before we dive into this jaw-dropping story, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will leave you speechless. Trust me, you won't want to miss a single second. Simone Hayes had everything. A stunning penthouse overlooking the city skyline, a closet full of designer clothes, invitations to galas where champagne flowed and diamonds glittered under crystal chandeliers. But more than the wealth, more than the luxury, she had Marcus, her college sweetheart, her partner, her husband of 12 years. Marcus Hayes, the tech billionaire whose face graced magazine covers and whose company had revolutionized digital finance. Together they were untouchable, or so she thought. Their love story was the kind people envied. Simone met Marcus in college when they were both broke students with big dreams. She was studying architecture, poring over blueprints in the library until dawn. He was a computer science major, coding in his dorm room, convinced he'd change the world. They fell in love over cheap pizza and cheaper wine, making promises under starlit skies about the future they'd build together. And they did build it. When Marcus dropped out junior year to launch his startup, Simone didn't hesitate. She postponed her own dreams, took a job as a secretary to pay their bills, and believed in him when nobody else did. She was there during the failed pitches, the rejected loans, the nights he wanted to give up. She held him together with her faith, her sacrifice, her unwavering support. 10 years later, that sacrifice seemed worth it. Marcus's company, FinTech Solutions, went public. Overnight, they became billionaires. The cramped apartment became a penthouse. The struggles became stories they told at dinner parties. Simone returned to architecture, but by then, her career had stalled. She became known not as Simone Hayes, the architect, but as Marcus Hayes's wife. She told herself it didn't matter. They were a team. His success was their success. But over the past 6 months, something had shifted. Marcus came home later and later, his face illuminated by his phone screen even at midnight. Their conversations became transactional. "How was your day?" "Fine. Did you eat?" "Yeah." The man who once couldn't keep his hands off her now kissed her forehead absently, his mind already somewhere else. Their anniversary passed with a bouquet of roses and an apology, another emergency at work. Always another emergency. Simone's friends assured her this was normal. "He's building an empire," they said. "Be patient." But Simone knew Marcus. She knew the way his jaw tightened when he was hiding something. She knew the forced casualness in his voice when he lied about where he'd been. Her gut whispered warnings she tried desperately to ignore, because acknowledging them meant confronting a truth she wasn't ready to face. Then came that Thursday night in November. Marcus packed a bag, kissed her goodbye, and said he had to fly to San Francisco for an emergency investor meeting. "I'll be back Saturday," he promised. "We'll have dinner at that Italian place you love." She watched him leave, and for reasons she couldn't explain, tears filled her eyes. That night, alone in their massive penthouse, Simone couldn't sleep. The silence felt oppressive. The bed felt too big. At midnight, she reached for her phone, just wanting to hear his voice, to feel connected to him across the miles. Her fingers trembled as she dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a woman answered. "Hello?" The voice was professional, clipped, unfamiliar. Simone's heart stopped. Her mind raced through explanations. Wrong number, hotel staff, a colleague. But something in that voice made her blood run cold. "Who is this?" Simone managed, her voice barely a whisper. "Is this Mrs. Hayes? Mrs. Simone Hayes?" The woman knew her name. The room spun. "Yes. Who are you? Where's my husband?" There was a pause, heavy with meaning. "Mrs. Hayes, my name is Detective Laura Chen with the San Francisco Police Department. I'm calling from your husband's phone because he's currently in custody." The words didn't make sense. Custody? Police? This had to be a mistake, a nightmare, a horrible joke. "I don't understand," Simone said, her voice cracking. "There must be some mistake. Marcus is in San Francisco for business." "Mrs. Hayes, your husband was arrested 3 hours ago." The detective's voice was gentle now, almost pitiful. "He's being charged with securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy. The FBI has been investigating fintech solutions for 18 months. Mrs. Hayes, your husband's company was a Ponzi scheme. Over $3 billion in investor funds are missing." The phone slipped from Simone's hand. $3 billion. Ponzi scheme. The words echoed in her skull, refusing to connect to reality. This was Marcus. Her Marcus. The man who cried at their wedding. The man who brought her coffee in bed every Sunday. The man she'd sacrificed everything for. Detective Chen was still talking. Simone picked up the phone with shaking hands. "Need you to understand the severity of this situation. Mrs. Hayes, are you listening?" "Yes," Simone whispered. "Your assets will be frozen pending investigation. And Mrs. Hayes, I need to inform you that you're also under investigation. Your signature appears on multiple fraudulent documents. We'll need you to come in for questioning." The line went dead. Dawn broke with the sound of battering rams against the front door. Federal agents poured into the penthouse like a flood, their faces hard, their movements efficient. They tore through her home with gloved hands, boxing up files, hard drives, photo albums, wedding pictures. Everything she owned became evidence. Simone stood in her nightgown, frozen, watching her life get packed into cardboard boxes and hauled away. Outside, news vans lined the street. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. By noon, her face was on every major network. Billionaire's wife, guilty partner or innocent victim? The headlines were merciless. Her phone exploded with notifications, texts, calls, emails. But as she scrolled through them, the messages all said the same thing. Friends distancing themselves, colleagues cutting ties. People she'd known for years suddenly unable to remember her number. Her bank account was frozen, her credit cards declined, the penthouse locks were changed by court order. Simone found herself standing on the sidewalk with one suitcase and $200 in cash she'd kept in her gym bag. Everything else, gone. The life she'd known, erased in less than 24 hours. She checked into a motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind with flickering neon signs and stained carpets. That night, curled on a lumpy mattress that smelled of bleach and cigarettes, Simone finally let herself break. She sobbed until her throat was raw, until no more tears would come. How had this happened? How had she not seen it? The next morning, she flew to San Francisco on a ticket purchased with her last $100. She had to see Marcus, had to hear from his own mouth that this was all a misunderstanding, a mistake, something that could be fixed. The jail was cold and gray, smelling of industrial cleaner and desperation. When they brought Marcus out, Simone barely recognized him. He wore an orange jumpsuit. His hands were shackled. The confident, powerful man she'd married looked small and broken. He couldn't meet her eyes. "Tell me it's not true," Simone said, her voice steady despite the hurricane inside her. "Tell me they're wrong." Marcus finally looked at her, and what she saw in his eyes destroyed her last shred of hope, guilt, shame, and something worse, resignation. "It's true," he said quietly. "All of it. The company was built on lies, Simone, for years. I took money from new investors to pay old ones. I falsified reports. I created fake assets. It was all a house of cards, and it finally collapsed." Simone felt like she was drowning. "Why? We had everything, Marcus. Why would you—" "Because we didn't," his voice rose desperate. "That first year the company was failing. I was failing. I couldn't lose you, Simone. I couldn't go back to being nothing after you'd sacrificed so much for me. So I lied. I faked the numbers. And then I had to keep lying to cover the first lies. It spiraled. I couldn't stop it. So you let thousands of people lose their savings, their retirements, their futures?" Simone's voice was ice. Marcus's face crumpled. "I never meant for it to go this far. I thought I could fix it. I thought, they think I was involved. Simone interrupted. "They think I helped you. My signature is on documents, Marcus. Documents I never signed." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus wouldn't look at her. "Marcus," her voice was barely audible. "What did you do?" "I forged your signature." The words came out in a rush. "On the incorporation papers, on the financial statements, on loan documents, if this all came out, I needed someone else to share the blame, to split the sentence. You were the perfect candidate, my wife, my partner. Nobody would question your involvement." Simone stood up, her chair scraping against the concrete floor. She looked at this stranger wearing her husband's face, and something inside her that had been bent finally snapped clean. "You framed me," she said. "You stole my life, my reputation, my freedom, to save yourself." "Simone, please, don't." Her voice could have cut glass. "Don't say my name. Don't apologize. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." Back in that motel room, Simone stared at the water-stained ceiling and took inventory of her life. No money, no home, no husband, no friends. Facing 20 years in federal prison for crimes she didn't commit. Most people would have given up, would have let the weight of it all crush them into dust. But Simone wasn't most people. She'd spent 12 years being Marcus Hayes' wife, but before that, she'd been Simone Carter, the girl who'd put herself through college, the architecture student who'd won every design competition she'd entered, the woman who'd solved problems nobody else could see. That woman was still in there, buried under years of playing the supportive wife, and now, with everything stripped away, that woman woke up. Simone called the only person she could think of, Professor Raymond Davis, her mentor from architecture school. She hadn't spoken to him in years, but when she told him everything, he didn't hesitate. "Come stay in my guest house," he said. "And Simone, I believe you. Now let's prove it." Over the next 3 months, Simone became a woman possessed. She requested every document from Marcus's company through her lawyer. She went through old emails, text messages, files she'd saved on flash drives without knowing why. She was an architect. She knew how to see patterns, how to spot what didn't fit, and slowly, piece by piece, she started building her case. The signatures Marcus had forged didn't match hers. Not really. The pressure points were wrong. The loop of her S was different. She hired a forensic document examiner who confirmed it. Sophisticated forgery software, but not perfect. Then she found the emails. Marcus had deleted them from her account, but she'd backed up her computer 2 years ago. There they were, exchanges between Marcus and his CFO discussing the Simone insurance policy. Her stomach turned as she read Marcus's words. "If this blows up, we need a scapegoat. Simone's perfect. She's trusted, she's visible, and she's so in love with me, she'll never see it coming." But Simone's biggest break came from an unexpected source. One evening, as she sat in Professor Davis's guest house surrounded by documents, her laptop pinged with a new email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "I can help you." The message was brief. "I worked for Marcus. I know you're innocent. Meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at noon. Come alone. J." Every instinct told Simone this could be a trap, but she was out of options. The next day, she sat on a park bench overlooking the water and waited. A young man approached, mid-20s, nervous energy radiating off him. He sat down, hands shaking. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm James Park. I was a junior accountant at FinTech Solutions." "Why are you here?" Simone asked carefully. "Because my grandmother invested her entire retirement in your husband's fund. $200,000, her whole life savings. She lost everything. She can't afford her medications now. She might lose her home." His voice cracked. "But that's not the only reason. I recorded conversations with Marcus. I have proof he planned to frame you from the beginning." Simone's heart hammered. "Why would you record him?" "I suspected something was wrong months before the arrest. I started documenting everything. I was going to go to the FBI, but then everything collapsed so fast." He pulled out a phone. "I have recordings, Mrs. Hayes, hours of them. Marcus's own words, admitting he forged your signatures, discussing how to make you look complicit, how to use your trust against you. James pressed play. Marcus's voice filled the air between them. Simone's smart, but she's loyal to a fault. She'll never question me, and if this goes south, she'll make the perfect fall guy. I've already got her signature on enough documents to ensure she goes down with me. It's insurance, that's all. Simone closed her eyes. Hearing it was worse than knowing it. There's more, James said. Much more. And I'll testify. I'll give this to your lawyers, to the FBI, to anyone who'll listen. What he did to you, it's not right. None of this is right. For the first time in months, Simone felt something other than despair. She felt hope. Together, Simone and James approached Detective Chen, the same detective who'd answered Marcus's phone that terrible night. As it turned out, Chen had suspected Simone's innocence from the start. The investigation had shown that Simone had no access to company accounts, no communication with investors, no involvement in any business decisions. Chen had been quietly building a case to exonerate her while prosecuting Marcus. With James's recordings, the forged signature analysis, and Detective Chen's support, Simone's legal team built an ironclad defense. More than that, they built a case showing that Simone was not Marcus's partner in crime. She was his first and most devastating victim. The trial began on a cold Monday in March. The courtroom was packed with investors who'd lost everything, reporters hungry for scandal, and curious onlookers drawn to the spectacle. Simone sat at the defense table, her spine straight, her head high. She'd been knocked down, but she would not stay down. Marcus's lawyers tried to paint her as equally guilty, a cunning woman who'd helped orchestrate the fraud while playing the innocent wife. They pointed to her lifestyle, the luxury she'd enjoyed, suggesting she must have known where the money came from. For 3 days, they tore into her character, her marriage, her choices. Then Simone took the stand. She spoke quietly but clearly, telling the jury everything. How she'd sacrificed her career for Marcus's dream. How he'd shut her out of all business decisions. How she'd trusted him completely because she'd loved him. How she'd discovered the truth the same way they had, through a phone call that shattered her world. "I didn't know," she said, looking each juror in the eye. "But my ignorance doesn't excuse that I benefited from his crimes. People lost everything while I lived in luxury. That knowledge will haunt me forever. But I did not help him. I did not know. And when I discovered the truth, I didn't run. I fought to expose it." Then James took the stand. He played the recordings for the packed courtroom. Marcus's voice echoed off the walls, cold and calculating, discussing Simone like she was a chess piece to be sacrificed. The jurors' faces shifted from skepticism to shock to disgust. The forensic document examiner testified, showing enlarged images of the forged signatures next to Simone's real ones, pointing out the microscopic differences that proved fraud. Detective Chen testified about the investigation, confirming that every piece of evidence showed Simone had no knowledge of or involvement in the scheme. When Marcus took the stand in his own defense, he tried to claim Simone had known everything, but under cross-examination, his lies crumbled. The prosecutor played his recorded words back to him. "Simone will never see it coming." How could she know everything and simultaneously never see it coming? Marcus had no answer. The jury deliberated for 3 agonizing days. When they filed back in, Simone couldn't breathe. The forewoman stood. "In the case of the United States versus Simone Hayes on all counts, we find the defendant not guilty." The courtroom erupted. Investors who'd hated Simone applauded. Professor Davis wept. James grabbed her hand. Simone sat perfectly still, letting the words wash over her. Not guilty, free. For Marcus, the verdict was different. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in federal prison and ordered him to pay full restitution to every victim. But there was more. Additional charges for obstruction of justice and witness tampering for his attempt to frame Simone. His lawyers' faces went pale. As they led Marcus away in handcuffs, he looked back at Simone one last time. She met his gaze steadily, and in that moment he saw what he'd destroyed. Not just a marriage, not just a life, but the only person who'd ever truly believed in him. Then she turned away, and he was gone. 1 year later, Simone stood in front of a newly constructed building in downtown Oakland. The sign read, "Second Chances Plaza, affordable housing for financial crime victims." It was her design, her project, funded by settlements from Marcus's case and donations from people who'd heard her story and wanted to help. She'd rebuilt her architecture career from the ground up, specializing in affordable housing and community spaces. She'd started a foundation helping people wrongly accused of financial crimes, offering legal resources and support. And she'd fallen in love again, slowly, carefully, with James, the whistleblower who'd risked everything to help her. They took things day by day, building trust brick by brick. One afternoon, a letter arrived from the federal prison where Marcus was serving his sentence. Simone almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won. His handwriting was shaky. "Simone, I destroyed us both. I destroyed everything good I ever had. I'm sorry doesn't cover it. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that you were right. I wasn't sorry I did it. I was sorry I got caught. But now, sitting in this cell, losing you is the only thing I'm actually sorry about. You deserved better. You deserved everything." Simone read it twice, then pulled out a sheet of paper. She wrote 2 words. "I survived." She addressed the envelope, stamped it, then sat with it for a long moment. Finally, she tore it in half and threw it away. Marcus didn't deserve her energy, her words, or even her anger. He'd taken enough. That evening, Simone stood on the balcony of her modest but beautiful apartment, watching the sun set over the city. James brought her tea, kissed her temple, and stood beside her in comfortable silence. Professor Davis was coming for. Some of the Second Chances Plaza residents had invited her to a community barbecue this weekend. Her calendar was full of design meetings, foundation work, and life. She thought about that phone call, the one that had destroyed her world. At the time, it felt like an ending. But now she understood. It had been a beginning. The beginning of discovering who she was without Marcus. The beginning of building a life on her own terms. The beginning of understanding that her strength had never come from him. It had always been hers. Simone's story reminds us that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to our greatest transformations. When everything was stripped away, she discovered her true strength wasn't in her husband's billions. It was in herself all along. She didn't just survive. She rebuilt, she thrived, and she turned her pain into purpose. If this story moved you, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible stories of resilience and redemption. Drop a comment below. What would you have done in Simone's position? How do you rebuild when everything falls apart? And remember, no matter what you're facing, you're stronger than you think. The phone call might destroy your world, but you have the power to build a better one. See you in the next video.